past 21 weeks, we have come together every Friday to talk about the headlines that came out of the NFC North division from the previous week. It is once again Friday, so it is once again time to do the ritual that is Weekly North News. Everyone, hello and welcome into the 21st edition of Weekly North News, our regular Friday routine. For this episode, we're going to follow the traditional format where we do one headline for each team out of the NFC North, and we're going to begin right now with the Minnesota Vikings. Their headline of the week is that the Vikings have brought back defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson. Now, this is something that all Vikings fans are probably familiar with. It was the second most important story that happened this week, other than Danielle Hunter returning to mandatory minicamp on a new contract, at least for this year. But Sheldon Richardson represents the idea that free agency is never over. In fact, the Vikings could still go out and get one more free agent with the cap space that they have managed to save, waiting on a lot of these third, fourth, and fifth wave free agents. So a couple of details about Sheldon Richardson. He's 31-year-old, signed a 2-year deal worth up to $3.5 million with a 2022 voidable year. So next year he could become a free agent again if the Vikings decide that this is not working out, and they can void that final year of his contract. He will likely be the third down pass rush specialist at the three technique position. It is clear as of right now, just from the language that Richardson himself used in press conferences, that he is not going to be a starter. He is going to be a sort of in the rotation as a spot, not like maybe a spot starter or just a situational player. And I think that is likely going to be the pass rush three tech position that he excelled at when he was here with the Vikings before going on hiatus with the Browns. The team still has about $10.3 million in cap space, as we mentioned, so this deal doesn't hurt them. This is actually just another one of these savvy front office moves by the Vikings. They bring in another player for defense. This defensive line has been completely rebuilt. The starters that we have this year is so much better than what we had last year, and the backups that we have this year is so much better than the starters we had this year, especially for the interior. Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, Sheldon Richardson. You can't tell me that that's not better than Jaleel Johnson and everybody that was here on this team last year. It's just such an improvement. It's funny to me because this is the ultimate reaction to the Alvin Kamara game on Christmas Day, right? When Alvin Kamara scores 6 touchdowns, the defense totally blows apart, and Mike Zimmer is over here like, and I took that personally. And then this offseason, he just completely changes the dynamic of this defense with the help of Rick Spielman and the front office. And I expect big things out of this front seven this year, and Sheldon Richardson is back to do what he does best, and that is rush the passer from the three tech spot. Moving on to the Detroit Lions, their headline for the week is that Calvin Johnson is happy for Matthew Stafford after the Lions traded him to the Rams, but he does wish that he could have taken the same path towards the end of his career as well. So he's sort of envious of Matthew Stafford. So during an interview with Woodward Sports this week, he said that he begged the team, the Detroit Lions, to let him start fresh somewhere else in the league, and they absolutely refused to move him. So that's why he chose retirement in 2016. He's been distant with the team ever since. They have not been on good terms. He claimed that he would have played anywhere, and that's interesting to me is because usually, we could even just look at the most recent trade being Julio Jones getting traded from the Atlanta Falcons to the Tennessee Titans. Now, Julio Jones finds himself in a really good position where he is going to a competitor, albeit in a conference that is very, very top heavy. It's going to be a tough road to the conference championship game in the AFC, in my opinion. But he gets to go to a team that is going to be, hunting for a playoff spot. Usually when teams try to trade star players like this, they're like, okay, you got to be out of the division, and if we can manage it, we want you out of the conference. We want you to be somewhere else where you are not going to affect us in the postseason. And for Calvin Johnson, I mean, there's a number of teams that I'm sure would have been glad to have him. And, maybe somebody could tell me in the comments below, because I'm not sure or familiar if any teams actually called to inquire about his availability in a trade towards the end of his career. But That was an interesting sort of revelation. I don't think it's anything that's really new to anybody. I think everybody sort of, is aware of Calvin Johnson and his situation with the Detroit Lions. Now, he did say that he hopes one day that the Lions will extend an olive branch, but right now he is only focused on being supportive for the players and not the team as a whole. So that's the situation that Calvin Johnson is currently in with the Detroit Lions. And it's kind of sad that he retired when he did, because I thought he could have played a little bit longer. One of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. Moving on, we have the Green Bay Packers. Their headline of the week is that Matt LaFleur says that the Packers have one plan, quote unquote, one plan, regardless of who plays quarterback this season. So Aaron Rodgers' holdout could last all the way to training camp. NFL Network is actually reporting that they don't expect any sort of a deal to come out of thin air in the next month prior to training camp. So this could be a thing that lingers to the beginning and even throughout training camp itself. And this also makes sense from the standpoint that, no kidding, that Aaron Rodgers, it's like, no kidding, Matt LaFleur. We realize that you have, an offensive game plan, but Aaron Rodgers has been absent. Jordan Love has taken all, or not all, but the majority of snaps in, OTAs and minicamp, which has just ended. But to me, this kind of says, this is coach speak, right? We've talked about in the past how general managers, head coaches are going to lie to you in any league, really, in any professional sports setting, because there's no repercussion for that. If they get caught in a lie later on, they're not going to acknowledge it. They're not going to admit fault. They're just going to move on because it's coach speak, right? This is just them saying all of the right things in front of the camera because they have to talk to the media. That's part of the job. But you can't tell me that you're going to implement the exact same packages that you had planned for Aaron Rodgers and hope that Jordan Love can do the same things, because I don't buy that really for a second. I think there's going to be some parts of the playbook that you're going to have to eliminate because Aaron Rodgers' skill set is just way, way, way more advanced when it comes to Jordan Love, especially at this stage of both of their careers. And even when, Aaron Rodgers took over for the Packers compared to what Jordan Love is doing right now, who looks like he's probably going to take over for the Green Bay Packers, because according to all the reports that I read, it looks like the Aaron Rodgers situation / dilemma is far, far from being resolved. Last but not least, we have the Chicago Bears. Their headline of the week is that Justin Fields buys into Chicago Bears' plan to start Andy Dalton at quarterback to begin the season. So at the beginning of the offseason program, Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Bears, announced that Andy Dalton was quarterback one. And they kind of did this in reverse, right? Where they signed a veteran quarterback in the offseason after getting rid of Mitchell Trubisky, which they had to do because he was a failed project for them. And there was no way that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace were going to save their jobs beyond 2021 going into another season with Mitchell Trubisky. So it makes sense to make that change. Nick Foles is still on the roster with his ridiculous contract, and there's not much that they can do about that right now. So they went out and they got another veteran quarterback, Andy Dalton, and they basically promised him, hey, you're going to be the starter no matter what. And then they found themselves with an opportunity in the first round of the draft to trade up and select Justin Fields. They took advantage of that. They did that. Now everybody believes they have their quarterback of the future. And despite immense pressure publicly from just about everyone to begin the Justin Fields era sooner than later, Matt Nagy has held his own and stood his ground on Andy Dalton being quarterback one. He even went as far as to say that he doesn't envision a scenario where Justin Fields will be the week one starter. He doesn't envision a scenario where the plans change, that Andy Dalton won't be quarterback one. And listen, man, there are some scenarios that you could probably envision that maybe you don't want to, but definitely could happen. So, but outside of those, he's standing his ground. He is not making any changes. And Fields, the reason I picked this headline is because you could look at this one of two ways. You could look at this in the light of, this is somebody who's not being very competitive. He should be, hammering at doing whatever he can to win the starting job. But really what he's doing is he's going in front of the camera and he's saying all the right things. He's winning over a locker room without us even really realizing it, because he's saying all the right things. He's being a good teammate. He's being supportive. And I think from what he said about Andy Dalton actually mentoring him in practice, that there is no reason to believe that this isn't a good relationship in the quarterback room, if I could put it that way. The only question is, how long does this last, right? Because as soon as Andy Dalton has a bad game, or they start 0-2 or 0-3, there's going to be even more immense pressure for them to make a change and put Justin Fields in and end this little quarterback saga that they have going on in Chicago. But for right now, Andy Dalton is quarterback 1, and Justin Fields seems to be along for the ride. That is going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think of these headlines and anything else that you saw this week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.